Welcome back to the Keeping It Real with KC podcast. I, of course, am your host, KC Phoenix. And yeah, I'm doing a daily thought. Haven't done one of those in about a week, give or take, I think. So yeah, before I go any further, KIRWKC.com, main podcasting platform. This podcast is carried on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Overcast, Bullhorn, Amazon Music, Audible, and several other podcasting platforms. Please feel free to listen to this podcast on whatever platform is most convenient for you. KIRWKC on all the social media platforms. Okay, so daily thought. Also, by the way, for those of you who listen to the tarot readings as well, all of the October readings are up. So the general readings, the love readings, the money readings for all of the signs, all of them are up. Also, collective readings are up for the new moon in Libra and also for the full moon in Aries, which is happening on the 9th. Today is the 4th, so it's happening in 5 days. So some of you may already be feeling some of that energy. But yeah, all of those readings are up, and I will probably do a reading for the collective in the next few days as well. Just a random reading for the collective. All right, so daily thought. Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone warm. So with that, I mentioned this before. I haven't done it as a daily thought though, but I have mentioned it briefly either in readings or just random talking or what have you. As people, especially those who like to show empathy, and even sometimes sympathy, we want to help others. And there's nothing wrong with helping others. I myself used to overgive. That is one thing I used to do because for me, I don't like to see people suffering. Even the people that I may not even care for. I don't like to see people suffering. Not saying I can't be in that energy, I can. It's just rare that I'm in that energy. And if there's something that I can do to help, I usually like to help. Because that's, I'm a Cancer. That's how we are. But over the years, I learned that overgiving and giving so much, or giving at times when I may not have the resources in the past, that doesn't help everyone. Because when you give, you want it to be in a situation where it is something that won't, I need the word, it's on the tip of my tongue, is something that won't subtract from you. In the sense of, if you were to give someone, and I'm just making up something here, if you were to give someone $100, yeah, it's less money that you have, but really, if you have, let's say $100,000 in your bank account, giving $100 away isn't going to hurt you. Yeah, it takes away, but it really doesn't. You see what I'm saying? Where you're going to be fine. Now, if you have $200 in your bank account and you give $100, okay, now we're moving, slowly migrating into the territory of you're setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Because that's not enough money in your bank account where if something comes up, some type of emergency or what have you, okay, you just gave someone $100 because they told you that they needed it or asked for it or what have you, instead of saying, hey, I don't really have enough right now. Maybe I can give you like $20 or something like that. Those are the things that I'm talking about. It's another thing too, where if you're asked to do something that might affect your schedule and stuff, it's okay to say no. Pretty sure I did a daily thought on that too. If not, then maybe I need to, but I'm pretty sure I did the daily thought on that. When you rearrange your schedule, when you do things, you're taking away from what you could be doing to better your life. Now, I'm not saying say no all the time. Again, just like the example with the $100 thing. If you have $100,000 in your bank account, yeah, it's kind of whatever. If you have $200 in your bank account, okay, we might have a problem. within that same vein, if you have the extra time, or if you know that you can rearrange your schedule where it won't affect the productivity in your life, where it won't affect what you're doing to better yourself as an individual, then it's whatever. Because it's like, oh, I have the time, I can go ahead and do it. But if you're booked and busy and somebody is asking you to do something that will throw off your schedule and possibly affect your income or your resources or your relationships or this or that, where there isn't a gain for that, and you're really taking a hit, you're taking a loss, that's what I'm talking about, where you're throwing yourself on the fire to keep someone else warm, is what you're doing. These are the things. And sometimes you have to be like an air sign. Air signs are very strategic signs because they don't lead with their heart. They usually lead with their mind, unless there's a whole bunch of planets and so on and so forth. But for the most part, air signs usually lead with their mind, and they're calculating. Okay, what they're doing, a cost benefit analysis is what they're doing. They're like, okay, is this going to cost me? If so, how much? Is this going to benefit me? If so, how much? That is usually how they approach things. And it's okay if there's a balance to it. You can't approach everything like that with the cost benefit analysis, but that's another thought for another day. The point is that sometimes you have to step out of the emotion. Sometimes you have to really just look and say, okay, is this going to hurt me? Is me doing this, will this hurt me in the end? And then some people can say, well, there's karma. Okay, I can agree with that. There is karma. There was actually a situation, I told the story once or twice. For my longtime listeners, you probably already know. For my new listeners, which also shout out to the podcast listeners. My God, the listenership doubled this week, just about. So shout out to the podcast listeners. So anyways, there was, back a long, long time ago, I went to see my brother in Atlanta. He was in college at the time, because my brother went to Morehouse, and I was down there to visit him. And I hadn't been to Atlanta that often, but we were out on we were out walking and going places or whatever. There was this man who, he was asking for money outside, because you know how it is in the larger cities. And me, I'm young and stuff, but again, I'm a Cancer. It's just like, oh wow, he needs some money. Okay, so I go ahead and I give him, I think it was $1 or $2 or something like that I had, because the cash, I wasn't going to really spend it on anything, so it wasn't hurting me. Remember that. It wasn't hurting me, so I just gave him the money. My brother then chastised me for giving him the money, because my older brother, we're 6 years apart. So yeah, he was sort of like chastising me, like, why did you give him the money? I'm like, well, he needed the money. So like, you don't give money to people out on the street, I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. My brother's a Sagittarius, so he's more cost benefit analysis. Sagittarians are great entrepreneurs and stuff, and great business people too. So all right, that little moment happens. Later that night, I kid you not, my family, we were doing an internal family lottery, is what we were doing to raise money for, I think it was for either a cookout, a cruise, or something that was going on. So the lottery happened. I already bought one ticket. And then my cousin had told my mother, and then my mother told me. Somehow it eventually got back to me. I don't think I spoke to someone directly about that with the drawing. That I had won third prize, which was $50. And I was like, oh wow, $50. I'm a kid. I'm like, $50. Okay, I'm rich. So yeah. And I always think about that. I really, really do. That all of that happened within a 24-hour period. So yes, I do believe in karma. Please keep in mind that in that story I mentioned, I didn't need the money. I didn't need it. It was whatever. So that plays a role too. Now, are there situations where you do need the money and then you give it and then karma's like, okay, well, you took care of somebody else, I'll take care of you? Yes, that does happen at times. Does it happen all the time? That's up for debate. And also, it can be subjective too when it comes to that. However, I also believe in people using their discernment to say, okay, I really may not need to do this because it may put me in a bad spot in doing that. Now, do you want to be like that all the time? Not necessarily. But definitely sometimes you have to be like, okay, am I setting myself on fire to keep this person warm? And that's what I'm looking to stress. You have to be mindful of how far you go to help others. Everything has to be within reason. Everything has to be measured. It has to be balanced. It's almost like Sagittarius, temperance. The temperance card, the major arcana in the tarot deck, where it has to be balanced. It's like you can't be just doing it all the time, but you can't not do it all the time. It has to be balanced. You have to know when to give and when to hold back. So that was just on my mind. And also, I know that some people feel guilty sometimes because they can't always help others because they may not have it. And one thing that I can tell you, one of the best things that you can do is just say a prayer for someone. You'd be surprised. Man, I'm telling you, I've seen so many situations where all it was prayer, and then it was just fixed. I kid you not. Like, it was just fixed. And it blows my mind sometimes when it comes to things like that. Because people are like, oh, well, how do you know prayer works and this and that? Well, how do you know it doesn't? Because from many situations that I've seen, not even some, many situations that I've seen where prayer was involved, there was some type of positive result. And if you don't pray, okay, you're not really gaining anything. If you do pray, what do you have to lose? Just to check in for a few minutes and say, hey, could use some help here. Just like I was saying last night to the divine, to God, because I'm dealing with the situation and I'm not seeing any results. And I'm just like, okay, I'm doing my best. It's a situation on my job for those who are wondering, because I'm trying to get an answer to a question, but the parties that I have to go through, it's a whole bureaucracy, and it's just like, ugh. And every time, roadblock. So I'm like, hey, I could use some help. I need to get this fixed. I need some answers, please. So yeah, and I didn't have anything to lose asking God for help to say, hey, can I get some help here, please? And that's the same thing with you. It doesn't cost you anything to say a prayer and ask for help. You might be very surprised by the results that come after. Just throwing it out there. And that's why I'm saying the best thing that you can do for someone, if you don't have it, if the resources aren't there like they should be, is pray for someone. Because definitely I would strongly recommend praying for someone instead of setting yourself on fire. And that is my daily thought. Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone warm. All right? KIRWKC.com, main podcasting platform. This podcast is carried on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Overcast, Bullhorn, Amazon Music, Audible, and several other podcasting platforms. Please feel free to listen to this podcast on whatever platform is most convenient for you. KIRWKC on all the social media platforms. Until next time, be blessed.